You know, usually I like to take things slow, but I understand speed is of the essence sometimes. Got an expert right here on something called HSIA that apparently can help me get slowpokes out of my way. Isn't that right?
HSIA. HSIA is something that you can't cure with penicillin. Are you talking about HSIA?
HSIA, HSIA, sure.
HSIA is high-speed internet access. And the problem is the conversation that we're having now in our industry is about whether or not we can get free internet. Free internet's just not enough. So between content providers and attendee expectation, the need for speed is insatiable.
You're making me hungry. I'm gonna get lunch.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to be speaking today with Michael Owen, Event Genuity, and Matt Harvey, PSAV. Welcome, Matt. Michael.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
The subject is, they assure me, particularly topical, and that's high-speed internet access. And I think we should get the conversation rolling. Michael, if you don't mind, I'll go to you first.
Sure.
In terms of what the heck's going on, all this discussion about HSIA and what's happening.
Well, I think what we found is that there hasn't been a discussion of HSIA, or at least not a rich enough discussion. What we discovered, this is an offshoot of the Convention Industry Council Standards Review Group, and we came together to discuss any number of issues. This wasn't on our radar, and when the subject came up, the room lit up like a fireworks from every angle. You had hotel operations, you had hotel sales, you had convention centers, you had planners, you had destination management companies, and what became readily apparent is that the conversation about high-speed internet access is one that desperately needs to happen, but that is not occurring. Not everybody understands what it is, not everybody understands how it applies, and our feeling is that this was a great opportunity. If this group of seasoned meeting professionals said, wait, I've got a story about this, I've got a story of something that went wrong because of this, that the industry at large would be hungry for it, and that we're finding that exactly is the case.
So the discussion, although important as it was there, but it hasn't really spread.
It is. Not everybody is knowledgeable, and it's as simple as saying the hotel sales people, as good as they may be, they are not currently equipped to have that conversation. On the planner side, the planners may not even understand what their internet access requirements are. So how do you begin a conversation about, the conversation historically has begun, may I get free internet? Okay, right. And that the answer is sure. But can you do what it is you're trying to, can you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish with free internet? And the answer is probably no, because it's probably not going to be enough capacity to do what you want to do.
Are you seeing that also from your standpoint, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the capacity point is especially poignant at the moment. There's really two things that are driving the growth in the industry. The first is bandwidth consumption. Most of that being driven by the use of video, which is orders of magnitude bigger in terms of the amount of information required to move it over the internet. And you know, the kind of world average figures from Cisco say 30% year-over-year growth in the size of the internet, the bandwidth being consumed on the internet. And there's quite a lot of anecdotal information around that the meetings industry is actually outpacing global growth as well. The other side of things is wireless. So the explosion in the number of wireless devices that we all carry, and the statistic I have in my head is 3 billion Wi-Fi chipsets will ship in 2015. And when you think about the population of Earth being 7 billion, then you're shipping every year 3 billion new Wi-Fi devices every year, and of course most of those are going to the developed world. So the introduction of so many devices into the space, coupled with the increase in consumption in video, is really driving the networks in the meetings facilities that we have very, very hard. So we're in a situation at the moment where demand is definitely starting to outstrip supply.
In terms of bandwidth.
Yeah, and in terms of wireless capacity as well.
Well, the thing that was amazing to me in this conversation that came out, let's put it till today, not a year ago when we first started talking about this, is that the iPad's not yet even 3 years old. There have now been 4 versions of the iPad, but it's not yet 3 years old. The iPhone, which really started the smartphone, and I understand that they're Android and there are other platforms and that sort of thing, is what, 5, 6, 7 years old. I feel like I've had mine forever. I haven't. And one of the things that we found in this discussion, and I've been around this business for a long time, and I think I'm fairly techie until I met this fellow, but is that when the conversation came up about bandwidth requirements and high-speed internet, I defaulted to, oh yeah, that makes sense because of webcasting, because of inbound video and all of those sorts of things. What I didn't take into account was attendee expectations. Because as a presenter at occasional, at meetings, events, and that sort of thing, it wasn't that long ago we were asking people to turn off their cell phones or put them on stun. Now, I'm used to looking at the top of people's heads and I'm hoping they're tweeting something positive about what I'm doing. But I wouldn't dare tell them not to. Even in the general session this morning, we did surveys via our web phones. So it's a dramatically different world now. And the thing that we've discovered too, as we were talking about this earlier, is that this is not something that's finite. We begin this conversation because the pace of change in the technology is so extraordinarily fast that this starts the conversation and we need to continue to think and revise and inform.
Can you imagine, I mean, Matt, and I'll put on a different hat. Think of you're the hotelier now. How in the world, I mean, I've got to think about the attendee devices. I got to think about the presenter's requirements. I've got hotel guests. Somebody's downloading something up in the room. How does a hotelier possibly come to control all this?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the need for a decent bandwidth management solution in the building. That's kind of the technical side of things. But more importantly, I think it's important to take a look at the technology life cycle. Most hotel owners tended in the first round to think about technology as something that they could change as often as they change the wallpaper in their guest rooms, which is a 10-year refit cycle, generally speaking. And the pace of change of technology is not allow a network. It doesn't allow for a network to last that period of time. So it's not that the network gets worse or fails over that period of time. It's the fact that the technology moves on, people's expectations of speed and reliability and ubiquitous Wi-Fi have changed in the last decade, and that's becoming more and more as constricting the time frame, which is on the technology life cycle. So hotels are going to have to start looking at a technology revision and shorter intervals. You know, we're now in a sort of 4 or 5 year life cycle, and who knows what's coming down the road.
And I think it's all the venues. I mean, if you think about the convention center, I just returned from a major meetings industry show in Europe, and they have a huge technology section. And I had been trying to connect with these folks for a period of time, and we sat down for them to do the demonstration on their Wi-Fi, and they didn't have enough bandwidth to run their website. Okay, now, as a planner, am I willing to take the risk that my attendees are going to blame the venue because I didn't plan properly? I mean, you have to, I mean, you've got to make this part of your calculation, I think, going forward. I think anybody who doesn't, and also the notion of younger people and, oh, it's the younger people that are using it. I'm obviously clearly not that young. And I have, I think, 3 devices with me here this week. 2 of them that I use in here. And so, it's important, I think, that we have that talk. It's important that on the client side, on the buyer side, that there's bandwidth audits, that you understand your audience, you understand the audience expectations. One, they want to watch a video that's coming in without it stuttering and that sort of thing. That's kind of clear. I think most people, I think, get that. What they don't get is how much power it takes to power all of these phones. And what if everybody hears something that the speaker says at once that's very important, and they're snapping photos and they're uploading photos and they're tweeting, and everybody hits it at once, and all of a sudden you've got a surge, or not a surge, but a pullback.
Keep the scorecard straight here. First of all, internet for free, not true.
Internet is really not enough of a descriptor to describe the price, right? So it's what I would encourage everybody, both on the planning side and on the venue operations and sales side, is to get past this idea of internet as something which is enough to define what the need is, and really dig a little bit deeper. And then we can't really have a good discussion around the price until we understand the need. So you think about things like how many devices are coming into the building, what types of applications are you going to be using, where are you going to be using them. And one of the kind of aid memoirs that we like to use is to break an event down into its various components. You think about what your presenters need, whether that's streaming video conferencing, virtual webcasting, that type of thing is really a single-use type exercise from the presenter's perspective. You then have your exhibition space and what your exhibitors need in order to do that product stuff. Then you have show management and what they need to run their show, registration, credit card processing, those types of things. And then you have the attendees who will consume every ounce of bandwidth in a building left unchecked. And then there's really a fifth one that's just becoming important now, which is what's going on at the bandwidth at the other end of a remote video conference. And it's important for planners to understand that the quality of the signal at the other end of a video conference, if it's part of an interactive session, relies on both ends being good enough to transport that signal across the internet. So we encourage planners to break a meeting down into kind of manageable chunks, figure out what each of those groups is doing, and then build it back up again. And there are some tools out there now that can help planners estimate the amount of bandwidth that they're going to need in order to do all those things.
I know you see a lot of RFPs, and I don't know, Michael, in your business if you live off RFPs.
Yeah,
So do the RFPs come anywhere near describing the things you're talking about, Matt? I mean, the level of granularity and complexity of breaking apart.
So, what's interesting is that, with RFPs coming from meeting planners, there's definitely a very wide variety, wide variation in what you get, and some of them will say, "Will you give us free internet? Yes or no?" And that's frustrating for both a company like us, which is a kind of provider of high-speed internet services, and for also the venues that we serve. And quite rightly, the venues and ourselves are worried about, ticking no to that question and saying, no, we want to have a broader conversation with you about your needs.
We can't answer that without a discussion.
That's right. It's not a yes or no.
Right.
And so the RF, what we're needing to move to on the planner side is more detailed questions on RFPs, and at least presented in a way that says, give me the top 5 things to know about your venue. Here's a brief description of what my show looks like. Do you think you can handle it? And then let's move forward from there.
Well, I think what's important to know, too, if you're looking at the Convention Industry Council, the APEX program, so to speak, it's been out there for a while. And there are recommended RFPs all the way through, including audio-visual and that sort of thing. And one of the tasks that we're going to need to do, and that we'll begin working on here very soon, is to go back in. Now, no one has to use these. It's a tool. They're templates and tools for planners to use. But one of the things that we need to do is, in light of these conversations and what we're discovering, I start to say discovered, but we're discovering something new every day, is to go back and revisit those and have the space in there where it's not a yes or no question, where it is, what are your attendees, what is their usage, those kinds of questions that you ask, that you kind of key the thoughts in the planner's mind for when they send out that RFP. It's every bit as important, probably more important than your food. I mean, in the session today, it looked fabulous, but if any of that had gone down, and I think the other thing when you talk about whether it's content, show management, exhibition, I mean, you have all of these different pieces. There are questions such as, okay, what is your usage? Maybe you can do this with shared service, or maybe you'll need dedicated service. If it were me, I would tell somebody, if you're going to run something from the stage, that's dedicated to start with, and just as a policy before you begin anything else. But there are all sorts of ways to do it. The thing that we're trying to say to people is that this is not a conversation that we're suggesting happens in order to justify you spending more money. It's to have you understand what your needs are so that you can budget accordingly and not fail.
Well, I think you're right, Michael, because it's hard enough to come up with the answers. It's even harder to come up with the questions. I was thinking of both of you, and I'm as neophyte as anybody, thinking I wouldn't even know how to ask the right questions.
Right.
So this template may be part
and
of it.
Interestingly, one of the first questions which I would encourage meeting planners to put on RFP is, can you give me reporting after the show about how many devices I had online and how much bandwidth I consumed? Because the best planning tool for next year's conference is the information from this year's conference.
Exactly right.
And it's not going to be one for one because there's some growth in bandwidth, there's growth in devices, but it's a starting point. And then the second thing I would say about RFPs is that the price of internet is very, very dependent on how far out you lock down your requirements and how much bandwidth the venue had at that time and how much they need to move to accommodate your group. So it's, to sum that up, it's very, very difficult to get large amounts of bandwidth cheaply at short notice in a lot of venues. It's not consistent across the country and across the world either. The timeline for large circuits tends to vary very much so on a regional basis. So the more, as a planner, the more opportunity you give the venue to deliver on that, deliver on that RFP.
And I think the more information that you have, I think what occurs to me is the question you asked earlier about venues. Let's not just say hotels, but let's say venues.
Right.
How do they justify having the infrastructure in order to do that? This way, by the planner having the data and coming in and says, here's what my meeting is. It's a $2 million meeting or a $5 million meeting or a 10,000 person citywide. Here's what our requirements are at the and we know we're going to grow by X number of percentage, but it's about having the data, not only for the planner, but there's where you get the information that the venues need to understand that the groups that we're booking are internet access intensive.
Right.
Their attendee expectation is high. The usage is high from the attendee expectation. And there are some that are not. Again, it's not encouraging people to buy more, it's to understand what you need so you get what you need. There may be somebody who might be able to get by on free internet. I would doubt it, but you never know. But if you think about the hotel rooms even now, and I don't know about you, but I travel a lot, and what I'm seeing in the hotels is it's tiered. I was just at a hotel in Arlington here a few weeks ago, and you went in, it was free internet. Okay, I could get my email, I could read my websites, but if I wanted to do anything above that, it was $12.95. Then for the next tier, it was $16.95. If I wanted to do anything more, and I think that's...
Is it a good thing?
I think it is a good thing. We do it in our homes with cable. You can get different tiers of cable. My sister, who's older than I, and I'm very young, but my sister needs basic to get her email. That's it. She might look a little bit, but she's not going to watch videos, she's not going to stream or anything like that. I need a little more power than that. Somebody else who's into gaming needs more power than that. So what we don't think about is that, because you get that, you plug it in, you don't think about it. But we're dealing with tiered service every day now.
Michael, open it. Matt, you close it. Any final words for planners, hoteliers on the subject?
Yeah, I really have two, and really they're sort of reiterating Michael's thoughts, I think. One is find a trusted advisor and educate yourself about the industry to the same levels as you would, and understand internet to a similar level as you would any other part of your meeting. The second thing would be to plan early, build it into the very earliest stages of the planning process for the event, because that's an excellent way to drive the cost down.
And for right now, to get started, go to conventionindustry.org, and it's the Apex initiative for the convention industry. That's going to be the repository for, as we learn new things about that, there will soon be a new white paper from CIC in conjunction with HSMAI. And as we get more information, there are proposals, there's the bandwidth estimator, so there's a great place to begin.
So convention.org?
Conventionindustrycouncil.org, I believe. Is
Great.
CIC, most of everybody who's watching will know what that is.
Perfect. Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you, it's great.
Matt, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, buddy.
We've been speaking with Michael Owen, Event Genuity, and Matt Harvey, PSFE, on the subject of high-speed internet access.